What is the solution to going forward from this if your rent can't cover your interest?
Okay, so there is a solution, okay, and I believe that it will work.
I believe we're heading into one of the most volatile times in property history, and now is the time to exchange your time and your education for wealth. Through these series of interviews, there is a multiple of highly successful people who are related to property and have been through cycles and cycles and come out on top. They will be sharing their tips, their secrets, their educational skills, and their mindset to you so you can do it for yourself. Stay tuned for these great interviews. Hi there, all, Sebron here, and we have got Gary in front of us. He has agreed to do an interview with me. This man is full of knowledge and experience and has been in property for a long time. So thanks for coming, Gary.
Thank you, Sebron.
It's a
pleasure.
It's good to be here. It's a reasonably all right day, but after this video, it's going to be an even better day, I believe.
Yeah.
First of all, Gary, do you want to introduce yourself? What you like doing outside of property? What you like doing in general?
Yeah. Well, my name is Gary Pesticcio, and I'm at the moment running a number of hotels in the South Wales Valleys area, mainly in the Caerphilly borough. And at the moment, I'm training to be a pilot.
Nice.
So,
So that's why I saw that video online.
Yeah.
Nice.
And flying out of Cardiff Airport, and I fly a PA-28, which is a small four-seater light aircraft, which is a training aircraft. And currently I'm learning to fly in that. I'm up to 25 hours at the moment, but
wow.
Hopefully pass my test sometime this year.
That's crazy. Is there a certain amount of hours you have to do to like complete?
You have to do the basic is 45 hours, and you have to do all the various skill tests and navigation and exams and things like that. I'm up to 25 hours at the moment, and next week I'm hoping to go up to do my first solo flight. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Really, really good stuff.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's something that I've always dreamed to do, and something I started off about 27 years ago. I started that off, but ran out of money pretty quick with that.
As you do, expensive hobby.
Absolutely. But was fortunate to be able to pick it up again later on in life. I'm almost 55 now, so I thought, well, better start getting it done now before.
Absolutely.
While I got my health.
Yeah, that's it. You know, you've done all the hard work. Now it's time to enjoy the rewards and things like that. So, do you love a little bit of flying? Is there anything else? You know.
I like my cars and V8s in particular, you know, so I like to have a mess about with those, and I've got a motorbike as well for the good weather, but I'm certainly a fair weather biker, so you know, you'll only ever see me in the sun.
That's the way. Brilliant. So we got a little bit about your personal life. We know you're in property, we know you're heavily in property. How did you start in property? Where were you did you educate through it? Did someone push you into it? Where did you start?
Well, my grandfather and my father both ran businesses, and they were all about having, rather than renting an office or renting a garage or renting a house for a particular business, they would always say, buy something and work from that.
Okay.
Because I was in business as well, and when I was working from Lower Dock Street in Newport, I was running a mobile phone telephone shop. Yeah, and I brought the Network 3 into Newport way back in 2003, I think it was. Yeah. And I was renting a property there. Now the business was hard, because as soon as we got a little bit successful with the business, 3 themselves moved into Newport in this big luxury shop, you know, in this new shopping centre.
Yeah.
And of course that just pushed everyone else out of the way, didn't it? So, but I always looked at it like this: is I was working hard in that shop. I was working extremely hard to make money, which kind of was limited then because I just got kind of gazumped by the big network. But I thought to myself, the landlord of the shop didn't. He just got someone else in there. Yeah. So the landlord, right, was the winner throughout all this, right? And what did he do? Just collected the rent and made sure that the place was okay for me to operate out of, right?
Absolutely.
So my grandfather and my father was saying, if you're going to get involved in a business, then make sure it's something to do with property. Make sure you buy your own property. Now, my grandfather used to have a guest house at the top of Rumney Hill in Cardiff. Yeah? And I'd noted that he didn't run that. My nan ran that, Anna. And she did a very successful job out of it. She was catering to contractors that were working in the area, some holiday makers. And I would always stay there as a young lad in the guest house and just observe what was going on. But my grandfather, he was a lorry driver. He used to drive a tipper lorry. Used to work in the quarries. And so I could see this this great economy going on because, you had this house, which was a guest house, which was a workhorse. My nan was quite happily doing that. She did that for years. And my grandfather, Bamp, he absolutely loved driving the lorry, and they were happy and making money. And then eventually, when it came to their retirement, they were able to sell that for a lot more than they actually purchased it for, and went into a great retirement. And in fact, one of the things that my grandfather did when he retired is he built his own flat on land that he purchased with the guest house. And not only did he build his own flat, but he built two. And during his retirement, he rented out the top one. So I mean, it was just fun. It was just a great way of doing it. Now my father did a very similar thing. He bought land in Marshfield, and he was renting out the units, the sheds, and he did really well out of that. He was running his business. He was a steel fabricator. He also did body repairs on cars, and he was enjoying that. It was something that he was enjoying. It wasn't work to him. He was enjoying it, but also making up the income by renting out other parts of the land and parking spaces. So that was great. When I was, I think, 18, I was running a business, mobile Krypton tuner. I used to go around in a van, and I had some like a mobile Krypton tuner, which would go in the back of a van, and I would turn up, open the back doors, hook up someone's car, tune it up, and that's what I would do. And I decided, I got to a certain point where I thought, I can afford a flat, and I'm going to buy a flat. And in those days, when I was 18, how incredibly easy it was to just get a flat and get a mortgage. I mean, I look at my kids now and how difficult it is for them. It's crazy, right? The amount of paperwork they have to fill in for a start. But I went into a place on the top of Rumney Hill that was a broker for Birmingham Midshires. And I walked in, I said, I'd like to buy that studio apartment there, which was in St. Mellons. And it was 24,000, I can remember it today. £24,000. I said, I'd like to buy that studio apartment. And they said, how much do you want? I said, well, all of it. I want the whole £24,000. And they said, well, yeah, okay, then sign here. That was it. He even filled in the form for me. Right? Do you know what I mean? Which is great for me because I'm still today, I don't like all this form filling in. Internet websites where you've got to like all of this. I guess someone else will do it for me now. But anyway,
of course.
It's it was so easy. But obviously there was still a responsibility to pay that mortgage. It was a 25-year mortgage for £24,000. And it started off at around about 9%. And this is going back to 1987, 88. And I can remember there was a crash then in the economy, and the interest rates went up to 13%, and that was worrying, especially when you're self-employed. And when the interest rates go up, work starts going down because nobody wanted their car tuned anymore. They could, they'd go to work with the car missing. So it was then difficult to earn money, difficult to pay that mortgage. So I then decided to get out of that. Now, I wish I hadn't, because at the time I wasn't really knowledgeable. I wouldn't say knowledgeable enough, but I hadn't had the experience to understand that with property, if you get into trouble with it, right, just simply wait. As long as you're paying your bills and you're paying, even if it was just interest only, as long as you're covering your interest, right, then, you know, the longer you wait, the more it would go up in value. Now, I can actually tell you that somebody did make money out of that, but it wasn't me. Right? My dad, who was an amazing mentor to me, came in and rescued me on that first deal. And I said, Dad, I can't be doing with this no more. He said, well, you should be renting that out, son. Rent it out. I said, I don't want to. So I want to go to do something else in London. I got into IT and I went off and that was my plan. So I wanted to go back to college. I didn't want to be doing this renting out stuff. You know, I was 18, 19. At that time, I wasn't interested in kind of solving a problem that I could have got out of. So my father said, I tell you what, son, I'll buy it off you. And he did. And he kept it. He rented it out and he kept it. Now, not that he didn't have any problems with that, because obviously landlords have problems. Tenants can be good, tenants can be bad. And he had a lot of good ones and a lot of bad ones. But he got through it. He cut his teeth on that property, my father, and eventually went on to do other things with property as well. And he became a property investor, based on how he'd helped me way back in the day when I was 18. So he eventually, when he wanted to get out of that, he made money on it because the value of that property had gone up and gone up and gone up, even though it had been wrecked a few times and they had to redecorate it and put new furniture in, etc., etc. At the end of the day, if you look back, there was money in that property because the saving grace there is time.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think property's a long-term game. I think the benefit of someone like yourself who's lived through where the interest rates have gone up has given you an edge now of where to think and what to do in scenarios where the interest rates are going up. Do you know what I mean? So like, because you lived through that 80s cycle, then we're coming into a new cycle now, and you've got that knowledge and experience to apply.
Exactly, and it put me off, because I'm like thinking, well, that was an unpleasant experience to go through. Why go through that again? Now, by which time I'd gone through college, I'd graduated, I'd got myself a job in London. I was a computer programmer in London. I'd been offered kind of the dream job. I was working in Mytel in Caldicott. And I got promoted to work for a company that used to work for banks in London. And my job was to code for the banks, to write code for lots and lots of different solutions we did. We did trading solutions, we did mortgage application solutions, we did everything. And I was working with a well-known bank, not for them, but with them. And I thought, well, you know, I don't want to buy. I had actually decided that I was going to get a council house. Which I did. My wife had a child, and then they said, oh, by the way, you're eligible for a council house. So that's an idea then, right, we'll go for that. So within and back then I could even choose. That's crazy about that, isn't it? Oh, I don't want that one, I'll have that one. Oh yeah, okay then, sir, great. There you go, there's the keys. I'm like, what? It really was that easy? Just don't see that anymore today.
No.
So I'm now in a position, so I'm in London, right? I had selected which one I wanted because I said I want a ground floor for, with X amount of bedrooms, and because there was a lot of these masonettes and stuff like that. Anyway, I managed to pull off a place in London, and I was in London for 1 year, and then the council then looked over my shoulder and they said, hang on a minute, you're working a high-end IT job and you've got a council house, right? You can go off and buy your own place. And I said, well, I kind of could, but I don't want to because I don't want to get into that situation again. So what they said was, we'll tell you what we'll do. We're running an incentive at the moment. We'll give you a deposit on a house. And it was £16,000. This is what they said. So London Council, right, because I was in Hendon at the time, said, we will give you £16,000 to get out. Now, not only did they give me the house, they now give me another £16,000 for me to give it back. Now, who's not going to say no to that?
Yeah, definitely.
So I thought, this is fantastic, right? So I looked over the road, and there's a 4-bedroom townhouse in London. Now, London we're talking about. London,
Crazy.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, crazy.
You'd never think I was going to buy something in London, you know? And there's a 4-bedroom townhouse for sale, 50 grand. And you won't get that in London no more, right?
Was this?
This was
90s?
1995.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and plus they gave me 16,000 towards it, right? So, so I did that. Now that got me into property again.
Yeah.
That got me into property again. I worked in London then for a while and decided to get out, because we had gone into this kind of phase where everybody could work from home from the early day video cams, and being able to remote into people's computers. There was no reason that I had to be in the city of London anymore. And I moved out to Winchester for a bit, and then from Winchester, then I bought a place in Newport. So that took me into the time of still doing really well with the banks. But then there was the 2007 crash. Right? Yeah. Now this was the big one for me. Right? This was the big one. This is this was the point in time where things changed and my mindset had to change. Yeah. So I'd already gone through the situation with the mobile phone shop, because that was something that I did before I went to London. Then after coming back from London, I was in a situation where doing really well, fantastic contracts with the bank. They got more money than sense. They really have. You know? And you just tell them what you want, they give it to you. Okay, and as long as you do the job and fulfill the contract, job done. Right? That's great. But they're contracts. They're not permanent. They're contracts. So you've got to basically then make sure that you're looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, one day the banks all crashed, so there wasn't a next one. And then I kind of slowly but surely ran out of money. I was paying my mortgage, went to interest only, right? Paying my mortgage. The mortgage was going up 6%, 7%, 8%. Okay, and then all of a sudden, bang, crash. They went right down to the very start of the interest when they were so low, right? I don't think they got as low as the COVID ones, but they were low. Yeah. And even with that low interest rate, I was running out of money fast and still not being able to pay on this property. And I went from being successful in IT, successful in London, coming home, being successful still, to having no contract and running out of money. And I ended up working on the streets of Newport underneath a yellow umbrella, selling insurance for the AA Automobile Association, right? And the reason for that is because I was sick to the stomach, because I was faced with having to go to the job centre. And boy, that was something I wasn't going to do. Right? It was I was physically sick almost walking up the road in Newport to get there. I said, I'm not going to do this. I can't be doing this. So I took this job with the AA Automobile Association selling insurance, but that wasn't cutting it. So I thought, you know what, I've got to get out of this. Luckily, I was offered a job in Amsterdam. There was a contract in Amsterdam for 1 year, right? And as I was going to Amsterdam, a guest house came up for sale. Because I thought to myself, I've got to be able to get into the same situation as my grandfather was in and what my father did. With the properties. I've got to get into that situation. Because you've got to have something which is going to sustain you during the times of
difficult
when you're looking for the next contract or looking for the next job. So as I move into Amsterdam, I'm thinking, am I going to buy this or am I going to go to Amsterdam? So I go to buy the guest house, but the guy wasn't ready for it. He said he was going to do it, and then he pulled out at the last minute. That was fair enough, okay? He just wasn't ready at the time. So I went to Amsterdam. I worked in IT. I was working for a company that was providing a platform for delivering coursework to students throughout universities, all in Northern Europe. So all I had to do was be next to Schiphol Airport, and I would be flying out then flying out to all the various airports that I needed to be in within Northern Europe. It was a fantastic job, and I was hoping to stay out there. Now, I went and bought a place in Amsterdam, but that's another story. I won't go into the international thing, right? And that went all very wrong, believe me, and I can kind of go into that maybe another time. But I ended up with the Amsterdam authorities chasing me for some fines because I couldn't complete in time on the flat, simply because this is what happened, right? I buy the flat. Now in Amsterdam, when you buy something, you've got 3 days then to actually do something about it. You've got 3 days to complete.
Really?
Right? You've got 3 days to complete. You buy it, and then you get 3 days to complete. And if you don't complete within those 3 days, then they can come after you. So of course, you make sure you got all your ducks lined up, yeah? And I thought I had. But when I went to the bank, who told me that they were going to give me 360,000 euros, by the way, in interest only, they said, oh, by the way, you haven't got your contract stamped. So I said, okay. Rang up Washington, D.C., it was a company I was working for. I said, contract's not stamped. Oh, yeah, we haven't told you. We're not renewing your contract. This is within the 3 days of me completing. I'm like saying, what the heck? Yeah? And so therefore I defaulted. There was nothing I could do about it. So they were then kind of saying, well, you know, you owe this fine, this compensation to
for not buying that house.
For not buying it, yeah. And eventually, using the Dutch authorities and the solicitors and everything else, then we managed to explain the situation, and they dropped it all.
Okay.
But as that was happening, and as I was losing another job, I'm kind of... oh, by the way, the place I was buying, I was also renting, right? So it was a very difficult situation to be in because the landlord and I was renting it.
From that point onwards, it gets a bit... Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the middle of Dam Square in Amsterdam, eating a Subway, basically crying in the wrapper, right? What's going on? Wet meatballs.
Yeah.
So... I'm thinking, what am I going to do now? And I get a text on my phone. Yeah. The guy who was selling the guest house said, are you interested in buying the guest house? Do you want to come and renegotiate?
From Newport.
Yeah. From Newport. So I said, yeah. So that was great. So basically, I came back to the UK, buying that guest house at the same time. Now this is in 2012.
Okay. Yeah.
October 2012.
Not so long ago.
I had absolutely no idea whatsoever how to run guest houses, and I was walking into a situation where I was like thinking, do you know what? My wife can run this. I'll be set up so that I can go on and do my next contract.
Yeah. Almost trying to, mimic your grandparents.
Exactly.
In that, yeah.
I was literally copying that because I knew that worked.
Yeah.
I'd seen it. I'd grown up in that environment. I'd seen my grandfather use that, you know, as like the baseline for everything. Everything was around that house. Yeah. Even what he did in the future was based around selling that and doing something else in the future as well. So I knew that was going to work. So we took a chance. I went to some external investors, obviously, because I needed money to do it, because I'd run out. Yeah. And they gave me that, and I also went to a bank for the rest. So now we had a guest house, which is up and running. Fantastic business. But where I've been into IT, I just couldn't let it go. I thought, right, okay, what I've got to do now is I've got to set this guest house up online. Yeah.
Okay.
Because what I saw, as in working with the banks with stocks and shares and commodities, and now they sell those online, I just immediately saw, there was something that never clicked before when my grandfather was doing it. He probably wouldn't even, if he was still alive today, would be amazed at what we did with it.
Yeah.
Is we took the power of the internet and the rooms, we simply said, these are commodities that can be traded online. Yeah.
Okay.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually make sure that these commodities are pitched at the right price so that we sell more of them.
Okay.
So I was able to write code and scripts to manipulate the online travel agents to collect information from what prices the rooms were going for in the local area. Okay.
Yeah.
Bring them into our system.
Yeah.
Work out then from that what we should be pitching the price at, and then in real time changing the price. So when you're, rather than just being at £50 a night forever, right?
Yeah. It fluctuates with the market.
If someone else has dropped £5 because they've decided, tonight we're a bit slow, so I'll drop £5, then I'm not stuck out up here, right?
Brilliant.
So my system would look at the real-time changes and move with the changes. So I would always be slightly lower. And my revenue quadrupled. Yeah? And then we needed more rooms. Yeah?
Expanding, yeah.
And then we needed more buildings. Yeah. And I thought, actually, this is a going concern. Right? This is now all encompassing my time. Yeah. This is all encompassing my time. This is something that I really need to put all of my effort into, not just going off and working a contract here and there. This is something that I now need to work. It's not just something that my wife can run as like a part-time thing, like a seasonal thing. This is something that we've kind of got to, grab the bull by the horns here now and
take this opportunity.
Take the opportunity.
Now. Yeah.
So more rooms then were added, and then we bought another hotel then across the road, and it was the economy, right, that we were in then was good, because we weren't like making thousands and thousands of pounds, right? And it certainly wasn't a become rich quick scheme, but it was a living, and it was a reasonable living. But not only was it a reasonable living, but it was a reasonable living which was paying for something, okay, which was a workhorse that I could then eventually sell on when I retire, just like my grandfather did. So that there would be kind of money in the bank for retirement rather than paying a pension, which you get peanuts for these days. You got something that you can look forward to. And then, not only that, but to reinvest that money into something which is just going to keep you, just like, buying a two-bedroom flat, living in one and renting the other. I was trying to copy what my grandfather was doing. Now, I was in a position now where I'd achieved that. Yeah. And then, of course, that's when dreaded COVID came along, right?
The never hurdle. So every decade is something, isn't it?
That's it. That's it. And you see, there's always something. And my grandfather used to say it. There was always, for us, there was always the First World War, and we went through the Second World War, right? And then if you look over time, you've got all kinds of different things. I mean, you look back into the 70s, there was a time even in this country, right, where the electric would go off. You'd have 2 days without electric. You do that now with all the stuff everyone's got in their fridges and freezers.
Collapse, wouldn't it?
Right? It's just crazy, So there's always something, right, kind of, that you're gonna have to face. You're gonna have to get through. You've got to find a solution for it. I mean, things like that happen on a daily basis. You're always trying to find a solution for the day, find a solution for the week. You've got a solution that you're working to for the next 6 months. But this one was a big one, wasn't it? COVID. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. Right? It was kind of bang. Have some of this. Right? Get over that one. Well, of course, I was on the phone to my cousin, who also runs a hotel in Barry, and he originally didn't want to run that as a hotel. He was going to do something different with it, but unfortunately, the planning dictated otherwise, and he had to run it as a hotel. So I helped him a little bit with that to set up, and but he's done awfully well with that. And me and my cousin were on the phone as Boris Johnson is doing the spiel, the daily spiel. You know, it was kind of like, this place have got to close, this place have got to close, and we're all thinking this was the big one where COVID was out of control and they had to do something, right? The NHS was
just
overrun. They had to do something. There had to be a big call. And this was the day of the big call. This was the day where everything was closed down. I'm saying, they can't close hotels. Surely they can't close hotels. I mean, where are people going to stay? You know? And he announced it. Hotels are now closed. We even got the government email come through. All businesses of these categories must be closed as of now. And I'm thinking, well, it can't be serious. Yeah. What am I going to do with all these guys here? So we had contractors in. I thought, well, I'll let them stay till the end of the week at least. And we had other people in longer term stays, people who were there for 6 months, but they did have somewhere else to live. And I thought, well, you know, I won't really do anything about them. But no, I didn't have a choice, because they turned up and they said, these people need to go. Yeah. And so many of them just went back home. But then we had a situation where there were people that were staying who didn't have a home. So they were homeless, right? And these were some guys that I was helping out through the local council, because they presented to the local council as homeless. And I said, well, we got a couple of spare rooms. Why don't you use them? You know, I would do it kind of on the side, if you like, with street homeless and vulnerable people. And I said, so where are these going to go? They got no home to go to. And they said, well, as it happens, because of the COVID restrictions, nobody can be street homeless. We're looking for people to take on the street homeless. So I said, okay then, well, there's loads of rooms, yeah? So I was then written to by the then Ministry of Housing, Minister for Housing, Luke Hall, and he basically asked me, could we use your facilities to house the people who present themselves as street homeless? So I said yes. So of course that's when the hotels became facilities to do B&B. We didn't change our model. We're still B&B. We do bed and breakfast for people who are presenting as homeless to the local council. And that pretty much saved us through COVID.
So would you say that without the experience of COVID, would you have ever noticed that as a new stream? In terms of, I know, giving back to the community and everything of that, but also you used it as a way to keep going in that difficult time, but would you have noticed that if COVID didn't exist, do you think?
This wouldn't have happened if COVID didn't exist. I was able to be in a position where I could provide a service, right, to homeless people that are presented to the council. We just happened to be in that position. We just happened to be a facility that could do it. This would not have happened if COVID hadn't happened. We had one or two. I think the maximum we ever had was 4, right, in the guest house. And we never ever had any vulnerable or homeless in the main hotel. But that changed during COVID. Literally, it was going from a couple to
everything.
20, then 30, then 40. Over a span of 7 months, right, we had 40 vulnerable street homeless. So of course we had to cater for that. We had to we had to work with the council to make sure that the correct support was being provided to these individuals, and then of course we thought, well, you know, we'll do this during COVID now, and then when things go back to normal, then we'll just get back to what we were normally doing. However, it didn't go back to normal.
No.
Okay, today we're still in a situation where the housing crisis is just off the scale. It's just you know, the numbers are off the scale. And we just haven't got enough rooms, haven't got enough facilities. What I did note during that time of COVID, now when we came out of COVID, as I said, it didn't die down. We just continued doing what we were doing, and that's what I intend to do still: provide B&B to vulnerable people.
Yeah.
But we found that there were a lot of families that were coming out, that were being evicted due to high interest rates, landlords not landlords not wanting to continue on with renting their houses anymore. They wanted them back simply because it was a bad economy, and they probably didn't have a positive cash flow in their stress tests. The stress tests that you do when you're trying to work out whether something works or not. We were all going bust, so therefore they were terminating tenancies, and a lot of that was happening. So we found that there were a lot of families being presented. Of course, that had to be done in a slightly different way because you need more rooms, you need more facilities for that, an environment which can welcome in a family. And so I then went out to look to see if I could cater for that, and I did actually find another hotel in South Wales, which we're sitting in right now, which caters for the vulnerable homeless families, and we've got quite a lot in at the moment. I can't give numbers on everything, but I can tell you that I've got 64 people throughout all of my facilities that are being housed right now.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think I think from a collective point we could say thank you, appreciate that, doing great stuff, and the whole story from start to finish now has started to trickle in my mind, thinking, now what was the reason for your success? Because I can tell there's certain qualities that are in people naturally, either built through the environment they grow up in or consumed along the way, that I could see in you. And, I think we start with the intelligence because of the difficulty of job, coding, things like that, which, high intellect jobs. We got the environment growing up with your grandparents who were succeeding and happy. And that was already the original source of mentorship that was in your youth, that you knew if you replicated that you would be sort of successful. And then your dad followed in their footsteps, obviously, because they saw it. So I'm assuming your children might follow in your footsteps, who followed in their footsteps, who followed in their footsteps. Do you know what I mean? But
I would hope. I would hope. But I think that it's difficult sometimes passing down what I've learned down a generation, right? Because the kids, they want to do their own thing and they've got to make their own mistakes. And sometimes they look back and say, well, I don't want to do that. I can see all the hardship that he went through. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go through that. And I pretty much said the same, when I was looking back at my grandfather, and my dad, I understood that what they did was successful, but that kind of wasn't for me. I needed to go in my own way. Right? I only came back to that after, when my own way didn't quite work out. And so I went back to a kind of a proven way of doing it, because I'd seen it work. I'd seen it work, and I'd seen what happened in the future with my grandfather, my dad as well. I saw him buy a property and he made it work. And so it's kind of like, well, I should have done that in the first place.
But I think you're right, but I think you're wrong as well. Because without you going and learning the things you did from trialing your own stuff, then you input it into the old-fashioned style of what succeeded. That made it extra special. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because of your intellect in coding, you were able to replicate that system. Not replicate, introduce that system, which changed the way of your income stream in generating income.
Yeah, so without the one, I wouldn't have been able to kind of, input that into the other. I see, yeah.
So I think...
Definitely, yeah.
You had to go through that side to achieve the level of success I feel like you did on the other side. And I think that's brilliant, because I think, generally that's what happens. I think people need to learn their own mistakes and they attach it to what succeeds already. And I think that's what makes them, unique and special, like they do.
Yeah.
But, no, I like it a lot. I really do. I don't want this to end because, it's been so great. I don't want it to end now. I'm trying to think where we go on or not. Should we touch on anything else?
Well, we've kind of spoken about the hotels mainly, because that was the journey that I went through, from back with my grandfather running the guest house and seeing what happened there, and then going off and doing my own thing, going off to London, etc., and then eventually running a guest house and hotel. So we've been through that.
Yeah.
But because of where I was with COVID and not knowing how long what I'm doing now will last, because it's, we can say how long is a piece of string, how long is this going to last? I don't know. Yeah. But it certainly wouldn't have been something that you would have gone out and done and said, right, this is going to be a sustainable business model. This is what we're going to do, and this is how much. It's just happened, and we're dealing with it, and we're dealing with it on a month by month basis. What are the occupancy rates going to be like in a month's time?
Yeah.
Are the councils of the government going to change things around so they're not using B&B so much anymore? Well, you never know. It might not, but it's certainly not a ongoing sustainable business model that I would continue to work in. It's like something that's just run that out for its course, and help where I can until the very end, if you like. So therefore, what I need to do is to make sure that I'm setting myself up for a future sustainable business model, okay? Which is always going to be something around property. Because property, from what I've seen all the way through the years, does make money, but you've got to wait for it. You've got to plan, right, for how that's going to make an income, and then if things go wrong, you rely on the inflation going up and the house prices going up, and they always do. Now they do fluctuate, and people have been in a situation with negative equity. But as long as you're waiting, that's actually going up. But as long as you're covering the costs on something. So if you've got a property that is losing money, then obviously you've got to do something other. You've got to restructure the business. You've got to restructure whatever's happening with that property, maybe put the rent up or whatever. You need to do something so that it's generating a positive cash flow. Even if it's £1, it's better than nothing. It's better than losing 50 quid. Yeah. It's £1. But if you're producing positive cash flow on a property, that property over time will go up. Right? So don't sell it. Leave it. Right? It's not losing you any money. Right? So leave it alone, because I wish I'd left my flat. Going back, I wish I'd left my flat alone. Because it would be worth a lot more now. Just simply by renting that out and just keep, with the upkeep, a positive cash flow is always going to work. So finding property and then having a business model with that property to produce positive cash flow is hard now. Today is hard, right? I just can't go off and just fill in a form, or somebody else fill in the form for me, and I get a mortgage for 13% and something. And nowadays you'll be looking at what, 75,000, 90,000 for a flat now. You just can't do it these days, like I did when I was 18. But what I have to do is I have to figure out, right, what property is out there and whether I can establish a positive cash flow on that property, and that is really difficult. In fact, I've tried a number of times to get the figures to work on a number of single lets, and at the moment they just don't work. They just simply don't work. Even on something around about 130,000, in the valleys, But by the time you get someone in there and paying a rent, for the market value of the valleys, it still won't touch the 6%, or it's gone up even more now, the interest rates. It was 6% last time I looked, right? But now I think they're up around about 8.79%, and the interest won't even cover what you can get in the rent. So it is very, very difficult. So I have managed to find a property. I bought 2 properties with a derelict building on, and I've made a punt at that, if you like. Now, I can give you the story on that one when I know what happens with it. Right?
Well, we'll come back in a month's time for that one.
But what I did is it was 2 houses which used to be one, but then they made them into semi-detached. So it did a separate title on each.
Yeah.
There was a derelict house at the back, and so it was in an auction, and I paid 270,000 for all 3.
Okay.
Yeah. On that, even to rent them out at the moment, it still wouldn't work.
Wouldn't cover now.
Right. But what I intend to do with that, myself personally, is I'm renting at the moment, because when I moved out of the hotel, I didn't buy another place. I just rented until a time that I could sort out where I was going to go next with stuff. I was thinking of moving into the hotel that we're in now, but that didn't quite work out. So I'm renting. So what I've done is I've bought these 3 houses, and I'm going to do one up, live in one, and then see what we can do with the rest. So that's ongoing.
Yeah.
But there is one thing I can definitely say with that, is that one, if I live in it, right, then that's, my rent I'm no longer having to pay. So I'm saving that.
Yeah.
And ongoing, having your own property, there's always the tax benefits of that. And because I'm living it myself, I'm going to be living in there over time. It's going to go up in value.
Yeah.
Right? So just hanging on to those little nuggets.
Yeah,
I can pretty much say, do you know what, that's going to work.
Yeah. I agree.
During the times of COVID down at the other hotel in Crosskeys, I decided, seeing we were so I'll start again with that one. During the time of COVID at the other hotel, we were thinking, pre-COVID, we were thinking of perhaps developing to the left and to the right of it anyway. Over the COVID time, we put in for planning permission. It took 2 years, but we managed to get planning permission to build a 3-bedroom house on the left-hand side of the hotel. So that's kind of like stacked up against, that being more sustainable down there, because at least I've got a house I can sell, or maybe something I can rent out. Yeah. And also, during the time of COVID as well, we had a coach and horses on the right-hand side of the hotel, and we've managed to get a design on that for being a 2-bedroom barn.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're the kind of things that I'm trying to move forward with to sustain.
So you
the business.
think buy something, add value through refurbishment, creating something on the other side of it, and then having the rent. What I'm trying to say is adding value, but also sustaining it as a rent.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got now a potential build. That can certainly, once it's being built, house a family.
Yeah.
And the same on the right-hand side. Once that 2-bed has been converted, because at the moment it's like an old coach and horses barn-looking thing. Don't really know what it is, but it's an old derelict building. And we're gonna we got a plan on that now for a 2-bedroom, and we're hoping to get granted planning on that as well. So these are parts of the business now which are going to sustain the business growth and the cash flow into the business. Yeah.
So what I was trying to get to with that was, so you had 2 different plots, add value to the one. Would you try and release funds to sustain the other one, or would you always try to keep it in terms of adding value, selling it on just to get the other one for cheap?
From what I've seen through other property developers, there seems to be a kind of a rule of thumb. As if you've got a portfolio, right, and you're getting into trouble with it, maybe your stress test has gone bust on a couple of houses. Maybe you're paying 1% more than what you planned on.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you kind of land. You kind of, that plane is landing. Yeah. And it's going to come down bumpy if you don't do something about it. And I know that because I can't land a plane yet. But so that's going to come down bumpy unless you do something about it. So what I've seen is the other developers will say, oh, do you know what? We will sell a house to cover that for a while. That's what they do. I don't like that,
No.
and I don't think they like that either. But it's a way of being able to
sustain the bumpy roads.
it. Yeah. So over time, if you can get another 5 years, okay, out of selling one house, on paying off your interest and everything else throughout that bumpy time, okay, you've also had another 5 years of the house prices going up. So maybe it will, even
reverse,
out.
yeah.
But at the moment, I would kind of be cautious as to selling stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I would want to be generating a positive cash flow,
Yeah.
rather than selling stuff out to pay interest on stuff that ain't working.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of looking at me for now, 130 grand, the buy-to-let won't cover the interest rates. Is there a sustainable model that will work now, such as Airbnb or holiday lets, to get you through this rough period? Or are we simply talking, what is the solution to going forward from this if your rent can't cover your interest?
Okay, so there is a solution, okay, and I believe that it will work. Yeah, but you've got to take a risk on it, and that is the reason why single lets at the moment ain't working is because the interest rate is high and it hasn't got the demand for rent. Yeah, I mean, you might get it because things are pretty desperate out there at the minute, but you just don't want to think that you might.
Yeah,
you've got to. You said Merthyr, for instance, yeah. So you've got to be in a place where you're going to be able to rent it out. But a single lets ain't going to work because you just haven't got enough rent coming in. And in fact, the rent payment won't pay the interest payment. I'm telling you that now. I've been there, worn the T-shirt on that one, right? So what you've got to do is you've got to be able to create more rent on a property. So that means it can't be single let anymore.
No.
So therefore, you've got to either do serviced accommodation, then you've got to get planning for that. Airbnb, again, that comes under some certain regulations now from the planners. A guest house, yeah, or right, the dreaded, and I'm saying the dreaded because nobody likes this word, HMO.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You get sworn at in a lot of meetings when you go in and start talking about HMOs, particularly by the community. You don't want them in there.
Yeah.
But they're not that bad if you run them properly, and they're certainly not that bad if you choose your clientele. So I believe that the way forward to make a property work is to do a professional let, quality HMO, and attract people like doctors, lawyers.
So high working class, sort of,
who are going to move in, right, and respect that property. Yeah. Now, the reason I'm saying this is not that I've actually done this yet. Okay, I have got a HMO in another area, right, and I have run HMOs in other areas before I was doing like the guest. I think it was a couple of places in Newport, but I'm mentioning them now because obviously I'm mentioning HMOs now. So a professional let HMO, I haven't actually done that before, but I got the idea from my daughter because my daughter moved to Portsmouth. She's an RE teacher in the Portsmouth Academy. And when we went out to Portsmouth, literally spent a weekend there looking for houses, like $2,000 a month for a 3-bed semi.
Where's that come from?
That's like, well, that's all my wages. There we are. Now what am I going to eat?
Yeah.
For a teacher.
Yeah,
you know what
definitely.
I mean? So it was crazy. So therefore, we had to look at something which was going to work, because otherwise she wasn't going to be able to move. Now she's got 2 degrees, right? She's a qualified teacher, and that's why they're all out on strike at the minute, because they're not getting paid enough. But at the end of the day, right, we needed a solution to this. So therefore, we had to look at HMOs. But in Portsmouth, they had these professional HMO lets. So they were well run, clean, tidy, well maintained, absolutely fantastic when you think, oh, I really would like to live in really like posh, if you like, posh HMO. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought, why didn't I think of this?
Yeah.
So that is certainly, if I was going to now be going out into Merthyr, choose a place where you got high rental demand, okay, a place where, a place big enough to do 3 or 4, well, I would say 4 to 5 bed HMO.
Okay.
Right?
Make
Make it professional, run it well. That is when you'll then start making positive cash flow out of buildings like that.
The situation.
You need to be aiming for around, I would say, £600 to £800 a month that you're actually getting. You're actually making. On something like that. That's after you've paid your interest, after you've paid everything else. That's the positive cash flow you want on that, to make it worthwhile, and then keep a percentage back for maintenance, obviously, because you're going to get your boiler going to go and stuff like that. But make sure that the planning is right, because in Wales, we're under what we call Article 4, which is restricted permitted development. And restricted permitted development means that you just can't buy anything and then all of a sudden say, I'm going to HMO this, even though you can in certain parts of the UK. You can in certain parts of England. Not sure about Scotland, because they're weird. It's always been different in Scotland, But England, certainly. In fact, I'm looking at perhaps even invested in some properties in West Bromwich, Birmingham area, where they haven't got restricted planning, because it's easier to just go in there and do it. Whereas in Wales, you certainly have to look at that. Now, I did get planning granted on a property in Wales because I bought a 2-bedroom semi-detached and converted it to a 4-bedroom C4 on the planning, HMO.
Nice.
But it took a year to get the planning. So you've got to take, but you've got to buy it first, take the risk on it. Yeah. So that's fine, because it would be worth the payout on it, right? But you've got to have a exit plan. You've got to have an exit plan on that.
So it's buy to let. The rent's just not going to cover the cost.
In my experience, I mean, maybe there's some people who have actually worked that out there, but if you have, let me know. Because in my experience, single lets just ain't stacking up right now.
It's too close, isn't it? It's too. I think what we said before this was, prepare for the worst strategy, worst possible scenario. Work off that. Anything above is a bonus. So, service accommodation is going to be higher yielding in terms of income. Is there the demand in the area? Would you say that would be the scenario with that?
The things that you mentioned, definitely way forward. So Airbnb, holiday lets, service accommodation, even B&B. Definitely, right, the way forward to get more revenue out of a particular property. Absolutely. Okay, but right, make sure that you're in an area where it demands that.
Really good.
Because the last thing you want is going out onto Airbnb and find out you don't get a single booking. Going out onto booking.com and find out that you're in a saturated market space. And that you're going to be selling out for 30 quid a night, and getting all kinds of different problems because of that, and wanted people in the building as well, with going down that low of price.
I get you. 100%.
So high area of demand. Make sure you're not in a saturated market space, and those will, as far as I'm concerned, work out, because I've been through those myself in the past.
Okay, I love that. HMO, which is probably the highest generating income, but you have to go through the process of planning in Wales, and the difficulties that could face would be long-term periods with no money.
That's right.
And then what else are we looking at? Are we looking at, just the basic flip then? Is that would you say?
Basically, I've never really done a flip, so I wouldn't be the person to talk about it. I mean, I might be. Now I've got this planning, I might say, well, am I going to use this for positive cash flow, which is probably what I'll do, okay? But I might flip that, and the same with the barn, but I'm not.
I can tell from your ethos, stick and hold. make it work through the tough times, and it'll make you money in the good times.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I like it a lot. I'm conscious of time because I want to talk for hours and hours and hours and digest it all. But what we'll do is we'll get you back on in a couple of months if you like. We can talk about this project you're going through now.
Yeah.
And we can touch on some other stuff. Just some free quick fire questions I like.
Yep.
Now I know good and bad story in property. In a nutshell, in a reasonable quick time, what was a scenario where you had a good or really bad story in property? A deal that went wrong or something?
The HMO that I, which wasn't a HMO when I first bought it, it was a 2-bedroom semi-detached. I took that on in the light of being able to use it as a HMO out of the gate, and rang the environmental to come and have a look at it. They said, yeah, we can use this, no problem. It's all ready to go. We can send you people to come and live in here.
Okay.
Yeah? So they were the kind of next stage emergency accommodation. So from emergency accommodation to the next stage. But then they said, oh, where's the HMO license? It doesn't need a HMO license because it didn't fall within having to need a license. But then because of Article 4, it was restricted development. So therefore, that was a year then that I had to wait. So I've been through that wait of having, So that was kind of, a kickback. I lost money on it. So I can say I lost money on it, but in the future I'm going to make it work. because you just got to wait. It'll come back in. But that was kind of like a failed start, I would say. And that was because I'd made some mistakes, which I won't make again. Because there's a feather in my hat. Another one is I was trying to buy an old doctor's surgery in Llanbradach. And that was leasehold, it was. And planning had been put in on it for a 4-bedroom apartment, which then I was going to make it into a 4-bedroom HMO. And I put a £5,000 deposit on it, and waiting for it to go through. And the deal was, as soon as the planning comes through, then I complete. But unfortunately, there were some issues with parking. And therefore, I had to ask for my money back on it. But that just cost me a lot of time and
wasted,
messing
energy,
about.
Gone.
So I would say, from my personal opinion, avoid leasehold, because there's a lot more written underneath that than you would think. Because the doctor's surgery, according to that leasehold, and it wasn't just to do with parking, it was to do with other things, could only be used as a doctor's surgery. So if I wanted to put people in there to rent it out, couldn't. If you wanted to use it as a dentist, you couldn't. It was doctor's surgery or nothing. That place is still boarded up today.
And it probably will be forever
3 years later.
If that's the the only cause.
So that was another failed one. But just lessons that you learn along the way.
100%.
Not to go down that track again.
It's all about what to avoid, isn't it? That's great. Thanks for that. Another question: if you were to suggest a book for someone to read, or something that you really enjoyed, something that gave you a lot of information, what would you say?
Seeing we're on a property program, then there's 2 no-brainers for me, and I have read them, and that is through the Property Investors Network, Simon. His book, Property Magic, right? Absolutely, you have to read that.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's really good.
If you haven't read that, right, then you need to, right? Seriously. And also Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That is
an
absolutely
iconic.
Phenomenal. Right? Absolutely phenomenal. In fact, be careful when you read that book, because it will make you dangerous.
That's a good thing. We like that. Be aware of it.
I'm telling you, it was like, it just, something comes out of you. Oh, I'm going to do that, And it just makes you go for it. So definitely read that book. And the Rich Dad and the Poor Dad, they both had experience to glean off, from both. So it's not just like
Just
you like
go
the
for
rich
the
and
win.
you don't like the poor.
Yeah.
This is basically, they both got something to say. And that book is phenomenal. In fact, that book has made me kind of fight my way forward in this property journey.
I like it.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Last question, and we finish up. If you were to say what makes someone successful, what attributes, what emotion, what feeling, what would you say that makes someone successful, like yourself, gone through it?
I think you've got to have a positive vision to know that you can do it,
Okay.
that you have a right to do it,
Yeah. I like that.
yeah, that you have value. Okay, and why shouldn't you? Why shouldn't you? What's stopping you? You have every right as a living being on this planet to go and make it work for yourself. Go and make it work.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. That's brilliant.
And fight.
Yeah. Fight for it.
Fight every day. Get up in the morning and fight. Yeah.
I like that a lot. That's brilliant. That drives me now. I just want to go and get out to it and start working. Thanks for coming, Gary. It's been an absolute honour to really.
Pleasure. Yeah,
I've loved every minute of it. I can't believe how fast time goes. You know, when I'm just absorbing everything, and it's just really, really good stuff. I'm trying to where should I send this now? I think there's a couple of announcements that I will do another time, but I know Gary's agreed to come down to do something with us, so that'll be in a couple months. We'll get you back on in a couple months if you like.
Yeah, great.
We can have a little, see what you're up to, some more stories, because I know you're full of them. And yeah, if people want to reach out to you, what would you say? Is there...
Yeah, sure. Got an email, and which is maybe on the screen right now, is it?
Yeah, I'll pop it on the screen right by there.
Yeah, and just pop us an email. I'm happy to respond.
Lovely. Thanks, Gary.
Make sure it's nice, though.
Thanks very much for coming.
It's a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure.
No problem.
Cheers.
Thank you.